Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. Welcome to the Department of Forensic Sciences. My name is Jennifer Smith, and today I feel very fortunate to welcome the Mayor and Mayor Bowser and Deputy Mayor Donahue here to the department this morning to start their interesting tour today. At the department, we actually have 3 divisions. If you were on the 4th floor, you would find our public health laboratory up there. They look at samples and test those with issues that are of interest to public health issues of the citizens. On our 2nd and 3rd floor, you would find our forensic science laboratory units. There, those labs work the traditional evidence that you're familiar with. They look at firearms, latent fingerprints, biological and digital evidence. But today, we've asked you to join us here in the basement. And this is because today we want to highlight the 3rd division, our crime scene sciences group. And in this area, in this garage, last year, those individuals processed about 519 vehicles that were involved in some type of violent crime. And you can see some of those vehicles here in the background. And as you can see, we're very full right now. So we are here today to talk about this division because the mayor has been very generous through some supplemental funding that allows us to hire additional crime scene scientists. So we hope to hire about 37 additional people this year with the supplemental funding. But as we are doing that, we also want to recognize that we are not the only ones in the city that process crime scenes. We actually work together with specialized officers from the Metropolitan Police Department that have special training in crime scene processing. And we hope to be able to hire some of those officers upon retirement if they would like to come work with us. So today I have 2 other individuals who actually work with the crime scene sciences. I'd like to introduce them to you. This is Grant Greenwald. He's actually a retired officer who's come back to us and is detailed to us from MPD to act as our unit manager. And STACY MUCCI, who is one of our crime scene scientists. But before we go on, I'd like the mayor to introduce and come to the podium to discuss some very critical legislation that she is proposing.
Thank you, Dr. Smith.
Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody, and we would like to welcome you to our Department of Forensic Sciences, that you frequently hear me refer to as the Crime Lab. And Dr. Smith was very good in describing all the work that they do here, which encompasses quite a lot that helps keep the district safer and stronger. I think you are aware a few months ago we rolled out a comprehensive public safety plan for Washington, D.C. And that plan hit on a number of key points that will keep our neighborhoods safer and stronger. First, we highlighted how we need to increase police presence on streets and in communities especially hard hit by violence. And we have been very focused on 5 police service areas. We've also been very focused on how to support neighborhoods and residents who have been hardest hit by crime. And our mini grants program has allowed us to do that, and we're very pleased that the first tranche of funding to grassroots organizations and individuals has gone out. We have also emphasized that we have to get tougher on a relatively small number of repeat violent offenders who continue to bring harm to our communities, especially with the use of illegal guns. We have also been focused on how to provide MPD with the tools and resources it needs to protect our neighborhoods. And we have been able to step up and finally make a down payment on the investments that this relatively new agency needs to be fully functional as part of our critical public safety infrastructure in the district. So earlier this year in the fall, you will remember that we moved a supplemental budget focused on funding our safer and stronger initiatives. But some of those initiatives, while we have the funding secured, we don't have all of the authority secured. So today we're talking about some of the very important parts of that safer and stronger legislation. We're very proud of the fact that we have spent this year focused on getting DFS back on track. We could only do that because of the employees here at DFS being very committed to moving this agency forward. We're very pleased with the very competent, energetic leadership of Dr. Smith, but I know that I speak for her in saying we couldn't do it without the employees here, and I want to give them a big, big thank you for staying the course and helping us get DFS on track. In order to do that, though, we know that DFS needs more resources. And in my legislation, we include a element called Retired Police Officer Redeployment Amendment. Retired Police Officer Redeployment Amendment. This will allow veteran MPD crime scene investigators nearing retirement the opportunity to work at DFS without jeopardizing their retirement benefits. Good detective work requires time and resources, but it also requires experience. When we got this lab, this DFS open some years ago, the crime scene analysis, I think you all know the history, had always been done by MPD. And the crime scene analysis, when DFS opened, continues to be done by a lot of Metropolitan Police officers. And just like all of the rest of the department, many of those officers are nearing retirement. And we want to put every incentive in place to make sure they know that there's a good job here for them right at DFS. We're going to need the council support in giving us the authority to do that. That will help us. We know how important it is to have experience. We know how important it is to be able to turn around quickly. At least we're finding out this year about how turnaround is helping MPD solve more crimes more quickly. So with that, I want to acknowledge again our employees and ask a couple of them to tell you a little bit about what they do here at DFS. Let me start with Grant.
Good morning. My basic duties right now are procurement and training for the Crime Scene Investigation Division. And that training also includes training some of the newer folks that are coming on board for the Department of Forensic Sciences, the crime scene sciences themselves, scientists themselves. Other than that, our street duties, we're really charged with the responsibility by the citizens of the District of Columbia to respond to the more serious offenses that occur within the confines of our city and process those scenes. So we're talking about documentation of evidence, collection of evidence, preservation of evidence, and dissemination of evidence to the individual laboratories for analysis, and then eventually presentment of that evidence into a court of law. So that's basically what we're doing in a nutshell.
All right, thank you, Grant. And let me also introduce STACY MUCCI, who has been a crime scene scientist for the last 2 years. STACY, tell us about where you came from and what you do.
Good morning. My name is STACY MUCCI, and I'm a forensic scientist here at the Department of Forensic Sciences. I've been employed here for 2 years, and some of my duties include, as Grant mentioned, responding to crime scenes, documenting the scenes through photographs and notes, collecting evidence, processing that evidence in a laboratory setting, and testifying in court proceedings. Prior to my employment here, I actually was a police officer with the Metropolitan Police Department for 8 years at the 2nd District. So I feel like my experience as a police officer greatly contributed and helped me transition into this position, and just being familiar with the city and some of the policies that DFS has adopted during this transition process through MPD. Yes. First name is STACY, S-T-A-C-Y. My last name is spelled MUCCI, M-U-C-C-I.
Very good.
You're welcome.
Okay. And I also want to acknowledge our Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Justice. Kevin Donahue is here, and Kevin has an additional duty today. He's the ride-along mayor. And I think you all know that over the last several months, many agency directors have been spending the entire day with me, both so they see the breadth of what that I encounter every day, but also I get to pick their brains for 8 hours, and that's fun. So we're happy to take any questions that you have. Yes, ma'am. Please identify yourself.
Hi, Nicole Ross with WMAL Radio. Can you talk about the importance of not losing that skill set with retired?
I can't hear you.
Can you talk about the importance of not losing that skill set with veteran cops? And with Grant, can you talk about why retired policemen would want to continue working?
Well, thank you for that question. And what we see is that retired police officers continue working all the time. And we want to make sure that we in the district aren't losing their experience. Police officers qualify for retirement after 25 years of service in the age of 50. So we expect many officers will go on to a second career. And it is important that we have the full spectrum of experience. Grant has already talked to you about how he's involved in training civilians that come in to do crime scene analysis, and we want to make sure that we have the breadth of experience on our team. But let me turn to Dr. Smith to say a little more.
I think one of the things that's very important to consider is it takes about 6 weeks of in-class training when you start with a new person with little experience. We won't need to do that with the officers because they already are coming with that experience. But it's also those intangibles. They know where these areas are. They respond quickly. They can pull from their breadth of experience. If you, Grant can give speeches on all the different crime scenes he's processed, from very small ones to large ones, such as the Navy Yard shooting. So that's the type of experience that just cannot be gained except by going out there and doing the work.
What new incentives are you trying to implement to encourage retired police officers to go into forensics?
So the question was what's the incentive? What the legislation would allow us to do is allow a police officer to be hired as a civilian without any negative impact on his or her retirement. This is your last question. Okay.
This is all part of the Stronger, Safer legislation that you tried to get passed last year, and the council railed against it, and it was tabled immediately. What do you think will change this time?
I don't think the council railed against it. I think the council just hasn't acted, and we're calling on them to act on the public safety legislation, just like the people of the District of Columbia are. Other questions? Yes, Tom.
Mayor, the deputy mayor may want to answer this. How many forensic investigators do you have now? And how many would you hire if you had the authority from the council to hire former officers?
Okay, I'm going to ask Dr. Smith to kind of talk about what we need generally here at DFS, and specifically in the crime lab. What we did in the supplemental and what we will do in the F-17 budget will not cover everything that we need. We know that we're going to have to, over a series of years, make the types of investments in our operation here to be at full steam.
TV loves numbers. You have X number now, and you like to have X number in the best world possible.
Yeah, so right now we currently have 24 individuals working crime scene in the crime scene sciences unit. The CSID officers, there are 49 of those officers here. We have sufficient funding with the supplemental to bring in 37 new DFS employees. But again, as the mayor pointed out, this is going to take us some additional time because we are hoping not only to take on more of the crime scene duties of the CSID officers, but also supplement the efforts that police officers in the districts that are trained as what are called reserve crime scene officers. We'd actually like to get those individuals back full-time doing their patrol duties. And so some of these new individuals that we're bringing in will be able to take on some of those duties too.
Just about how many crime scenes are there every year? It seems like there'd be quite a few, from minor ones to big ones.
So we actually, last year, the two groups together worked about over 19,000 either crime scenes or requests for some types of services offered by these individuals. So you can see it's a substantial amount of work that needs to be done by these people, by all the crime scene folks.
And Mayor, if I have my last question.
Sure.
The overall picture today, you're spending the entire day emphasizing public safety issues. There seems to be something of a rift between you and the council, that it says you're saying it's not acting quickly enough. The council, Mr. McDuffie and others, are saying you're not cooperating with them enough, that you need to compromise more like you did with the body cams, and that you're making it a political fight rather than a management fight.
Well, I don't know who would have said that, because we introduced a bill in August. There was a marathon hearing in September, and I think that we're waiting for somebody to tell us something to react to. So there hasn't, as far as I know, been any robust discussion among the council following the September hearing, and we're in January. There's some really practical things in our legislation. I know that one of the council members, in fact, doesn't want to wait for action, and he's moving an element of our bill by emergency tomorrow. Charles Allen has pulled out a piece of our legislation because I guess he's decided it can't wait anymore. We have in this legislation the ability to provide rebates to property owners, churches, retail establishments, homeowners, for cameras. We know how important video footage is to our investigators in solving crime, and we secured $1 million for this fiscal year to provide rebates of up to $1,000 for individual property owners. That's in the Safer, Stronger legislation, and we're very great. And when I go out to community meetings, people are asking me about it all the time. So we're very grateful to Councilmember Allen for moving that by emergency tomorrow. There are other things that if the council doesn't want to move on a comprehensive piece of legislation, that we would also look to get out. A little bit later today, we're going to be at the DC jail talking about many elements that we think can help people get back on the right track. Good time credits would keep people connected to employment as they finish paying their debt to society. There are also elements here that were basically part of what we think, could contribute to a climate of hostile relations between police and the community, and getting rid of some of those nuisance, what do we call them? Reasons for pretextual stops. And that's in the legislation, and that could move separately. We've also heard from people that they're very concerned, and I've been beating this drum for many months, about crimes on public transit. As a council member, I moved a piece of legislation that's now in the law that would enhance penalties for crimes against transit operators. And we want to equalize the law so that we also have enhanced penalties for crimes committed for public transit patrons. We have to be clear about making it clear to people that we won't tolerate that type of crime. Yes.
Also, Mayor, the question is the one I guess is probably most controversial, is the idea of warrantless searches in the homes of people who, let's say, let parolees live with them or where parolees live. Are you still for that?
I believe it's important to remove illegal guns from our streets. And I also believe that it's important that we hold people accountable who agree as terms of their release not to be in possession of illegal guns. But having said that, I don't want the whole legislation to be held up because of one controversial element. And so if it moved without it, we would support that because we think that the other elements of the bill are that important. And frankly, I think some members of the council are starting to take that view too. That's why you see one element being moved by emergency tomorrow.
The other thing, I wish I'd done my research, but I haven't. But I know that you had problems with this particular lab, as the accuracy of, and I think you sort of took things out. Where does it stand right now? Are the people here doing work for the court system? Where does it stand?
Well, let me just tell you, actually on the Last year, today, the first Monday after I was sworn in, or the first Tuesday, something like that, we got a letter from the U.S. Attorney's Office saying that they were the #1 client of the DC Crime Lab, that they would no longer use the DC Crime Lab to analyze DNA evidence. And so we have spent, and I want to really acknowledge Kevin and his team for being very focused on making sure we get a fresh start here at the Crime Lab. And we hired Dr. Smith and a really great team to work with some outstanding employees, and we're on track. We're on track to be able to handle DNA evidence at the lab again. I don't know if you have anything more specific to say, Doc.
Yes, so the issues mainly involve DNA testing here. All other elements were continued to function, and no accreditation was lost in any of the other firearms units, latent fingerprints, digital evidence, all that testing continues today, and we are on track to get the DNA unit open here very soon.
So so it was a year ago today that the Fed said, the U.S. Attorney said they wouldn't accept the evidence. So how long before you'll be able to come back or at least present something to them or whatever?
So we are completing all of the training that the analysts have gone through. We've done a lot of validations. We brought on some new methods, and we are right now finalizing all those documents, submitting those to the accreditation group for their final reviews. So we're very, very close to opening them up.
Yes.
Mary, it seems like the council is planning to merge elements of your legislation that we're presenting today with the legislation proposed by MPD and move forward with some sort of unified bill. Is that satisfactory in your view, or are you calling today? Are you pushing for them to vote on your legislation on its own?
I don't know that we have any big, and Kevin will be even more familiar with the bill that's the other bill at the council. I don't know that we have any major objections to what's included in their bill. I think, in fact, some elements of their bill we already have in motion and don't really require legislative action. But let me ask Kevin to speak to the specifics.
We have no, as the mayor said, we have no major objection. We stated that, I stated that under oath in front of the council months ago. There's three major elements to the legislation that Councilman McDuffie put together. One aspect requires additional reporting by police of interactions that they have with the public. Second, puts at emergency rooms social workers, and we have a program with our Office of Victim Services to launch exactly such a program in April at MedStar, working with their trauma surgeons. And a third element involves sort of a focused training, life skills, job skills training for individuals who have had interactions with law enforcement. And we took roughly half of the 400 career connection slots funded by the mayor's supplemental bill, and specifically asked the supervision agencies to identify individuals who are already under supervision as part of the criminal justice system and prioritize them for life skills and job skills training. So that's the long answer, but the short answer is that at a hearing that went well into the night, I'm already on record reflecting the mayor's position that we have no major objection to the proposals in that legislation.
Yes, sir.
Mayor, go back to the politics of this. The Judiciary Committee and Chairman McDuffie says that the police department has not responded to a lot of data requests that he hasn't really talked to you since sometime in December. And he said he expected to move some crime legislation this month. And his staff says they're not sure why you're doing this day-long thing today to make it look like the council is not active.
Well, I can only refer to the timeline that I started with, in that we introduced the legislation in September. There's been a hearing. I think there have been at least 2 hearings, actually, before we introduced the legislation and now. And I have frequent conversations with all of the council members, and our expectation is that everybody wants to work together on moving forward, and that's what we'll do. So we're talking about public safety Everybody's talking about public safety, and I think it's important that we talk about things that are very important to get moving as soon as possible.
Chairman suggesting he might move legislation within 2 weeks, regardless of what you're saying today, that he thinks he'll have it done in 2 weeks.
Okay.
And I have a non,
Yes, sir.
this is a general question from today. This morning,
Okay.
there was early overnight, there was a police incident downtown, 18th and L in that area. Huge blocking of roadways and traffic on the first day back after the holidays. My editors asked me to ask you about, are police sensitive to the tremendous rush hour in the mornings and not cut off all the streets
Right.
as you've done this morning?
Right. I never like to have streets closed. Probably if you ask any mayor that question, they would say never close the streets. Just before the holiday, I was in Petworth and there was a fire and Georgia Avenue was closed. The first thing I asked is, when can we get Georgia Avenue open? But it's kind of apropos that we're at the crime lab because the reason that it was closed is because they need, the crime scene analysis need some daylight to collect the evidence. Having said that, we want to get the streets open as soon as possible. So, of course, I woke up, watched the news, it's closed. My first question was, when are we going to get, when are we going to get 18th Street back open? And so we want our folks to work and have as much time, but we want them to work quickly so that we can get the streets open.
Just open the streets as quickly as possible in any circumstance that you can.
Absolutely. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You mentioned that you're looking at evolving your views on some of this stuff with the legislation you introduced last August.
Did I say that?
Yeah, you said if the warrantless searches is going to go separately or taking that out, I'd be okay with that and move everything else
That
through.
doesn't involve evolving my views. My views are the same.
Okay. Also, the putting more police officers on the street has gotten a lot of backlash. David Grasso, for example, said it's the old-fashioned way of doing things, arresting your way out of a problem. A Georgetown law professor at one of those public hearings testified that it's a short-sighted solution. Is that another area that you're willing to negotiate on?
Well, it's interesting because at the same time, people are saying that we need more officers. And I've been at this a little while, and as an ANC commissioner, ward council member, and quite frankly, I've never been in a neighborhood affected by crime who didn't say they wanted to make sure they had adequate police protection. So we are going to have adequate police protection. Thank you, everybody.